there's a couple things there that I'll talk about that I have problems with. Just the way the people in the crypto space like to obfuscate and make others feel dumb so that they can tell you that they're right. Whenever somebody's doing that, just heads up, immediately they're trying to scam you. If there's an appeal to intelligence, but they still confirm the basic operation of what they're doing, just know that that is more than likely somebody that has ill intent toward you, and be very careful. Don't just go out and purchase the cryptocurrency because you don't understand it. In fact, if you don't understand why something's good or important, and it can't be boiled down in easy to understand terms, then it's not real. Frankly, Monero is effectively the most decentralized, most based on principles of blockchain from the very beginning cryptocurrency that we currently have, with right to privacy is being taken into account, and obfuscated transactions, all that sort of stuff. Very good. Digging into the Qubic subject, so I thought I'd catch you all up to date. So there was a report from Cointelegraph that said that Qubic was successful in calculating gaining 51% of the hash rate on Monero. That is proven false, at least from the analysis done by Desai over there at previously known for kaspa. He wrote up an article here, but I have some disagreements with this article. So I appreciate the work on the hash rate. The community notes were made on X in particular, which I think is fantastic. And we were able to essentially correct that falsification used for promotion for Qubic. I think the thought that was going around was that they were successful. As I mentioned in yesterday's video that I think was posted this morning, it wasn't successful. They are continuing to attempt to do so, as verified by CFB or Come From Beyond on X, which we'll cover here too, because I had a little bit of a conversation with him via X, as well as a blog writer, promotional guy for Qubic in my DMs, which I won't share the DMs, but there's a couple things there that I'll talk about that I have problems with. Just the way the people in the crypto space like to obfuscate and make others feel dumb so that they can tell you that they're right. Whenever somebody's doing that, just heads up, immediately they're trying to scam you. If there's an appeal to intelligence, but they still confirm the basic operation of what they're doing, just know that that is more than likely somebody that has ill intent toward you, and be very careful. Don't just go out and purchase the cryptocurrency because you don't understand it. In fact, if you don't understand why something's good or important, and it can't be boiled down in easy to understand terms, then it's not real. Okay. Let's talk about this though. So like I said, this is on Shai's blog, and I definitely, or his Git book, and it should be linked down below. Suffice to say, the beginning of this report covers effectively the assumed amount of hash rate based off of selfish mining and attempting to orphan blocks by holding back blocks and submitting them at a particular time. That's effectively what it was. So the hash rate will look higher than it actually is. In this particular case, the assumption is the actual hash rate was around 28%, while perceived hash rate was around 35%. Okay. And that's just based off of solved blocks and how it's getting reported. And depending on, what reporting software you're using or whatever Grafana tools you're utilizing to determine this type of stuff, that's what you may see. So the verdict's the important part. He does say that given the data and analysis, I can say with confidence that Qubic managed to obtain at least 28% of the current Monero hash rate. This is congruent with 35% perceived hash rate, as well as the known bounds for ILC, sire, I suppose, of the hash rate used by Qubic for selfish mining. At least 5% came from new sources of hash and not migrating Monero miners. It is implausible that Qubic managed to obtain a majority of the actual hash rate. as applying the IL-SIRE with a majority miner reduces to an indefinitely long double spending attack. The probability of creating a 6-block deep reorg with a 20% or with 28% of the hash rate is about 0.3%, which is congruent with the fact that only one such occurrence was observed. However, this should be taken very lightly, as the standard deviation of this process is about the same magnitude as the sample window we have, which is only a couple weeks at this time, which was at epoch 174. Please go back and watch that video if you have not, so that you're aware. And I think that aside, so it was, I'm glad he did this write-up. I'm glad that we had some community notes to correct the report from Cointelegraph advertising a 51% attack on Monero, because frankly, Monero is effectively the most decentralized, most based on principles of blockchain from the very beginning cryptocurrency that we currently have, with right to privacy is being taken into account, and obfuscated transactions, all that sort of stuff. Very good. And then obviously ASIC resistant. You could argue it's not fully ASIC resistant, but that's due to the RISC-V application specific integrated circuits from Bitmain called the X5s. There's not a ton of them out there, but there is. But there is an ASIC in general. It's not a true ASIC, though, to be clear. Now, so the argument goes to this. So the argument goes, effectively yesterday had this argument with somebody in chat, and I'm glad. I want to talk through these things with you guys and we can come to an understanding. I can always be wrong, but the statement was that this isn't a problem with ASICs. ASICs provide better security than CPUs and GPUs, and I said, well, that doesn't make sense because this is all incentivized. So to give you just a quick breakdown of what Qubic is doing, they're offering 3x the rewards to mine Monero through their network as opposed to mining Monero directly. So the incentive is financially to move over and mine through Qubic so that you make more money. Pretty simple. So my argument was ASICs don't matter. It's hardware agnostic, because if you set the same incentive up on any ASIC coin, the ASICs will swap over. Now, in this particular case, and Shah's analysis, which I think is a fair point, is he is saying only 5% was the, the switch over. He says that it's highly likely that, wait, where was it? So only 5% of the miners are new, if I understand that correctly. So, but I thought he had said, where is that point? So he says, of the hash rate used by Qubic for selfish mining, at least 5% came from new sources of hash and not migrating Monero miners. Well, that means 95% of the hash rate came from migrating Monero miners. So the way he worded it feels a little intellectually dishonest, in my humble opinion. Like, obviously 5% is not that much of new hash rate. Most of it is migrating Monero miners. And so I felt like it wasn't, and he uses this to go into a conclusion. But back to my point, a little bit of tangent. I just wanted to clarify that there, because it relates specifically to what I'm saying, which is if you align the incentive structure on an ASIC cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter. People will switch over for the financial incentive. Okay. And that goes into his conclusion, which I think is really interesting. So, and it's really here that I think I disagree. So he says, what is the point of failure? To me, it's obvious, and I have been warning about this for years, so I find the vindication provided by Qubic pleasant. Well, I'm sorry, we're going to disappoint you a little bit. But he goes on to say that the answer is, of course, ASIC resistance. So he's saying he's blaming ASIC resistance for the possibility of this particular situation. He says, I have advocated for ASIC friendliness in the trenches, originally to justify kaspa's choice of mining algorithm, but eventually as a cause of its own. Yes, the ASIC friendliness has its problems and creative solutions, rapid emissions, and insane block rates, alluding to, kaspa's fast emissions and saying that solves a lot of them. I disagree. I think it amplifies them. And he says those are required to ensure good coin spread. Once again, not necessarily sure that's true, but anything other than ASIC friendliness is security vulnerability. That was the weak point that allowed a relatively small movement to bring a giant like Monero down to its knees. The problem is, at this point, that we have a new announcement coming from Come From Beyond at Qubic, and he ran a vote for the next coin to attack, including kaspa itself. But the voting options were Dogecoin, kaspa, and Zcash, all ASIC-friendly coins, and he is specifically targeting ASIC coins for the next round, I guess. We'll see. He says it's going to take a couple months at this point to prepare, but I guess maybe I should feel vindicated now, too. I don't know. Shy, I'll tweet at me. I'd love to have this conversation with you. In fact, by the way, I'd like to have Shy on specifically to talk about this because I think we fundamentally disagree, and it's a very interesting topic. Now, this hasn't happened yet, so I could still be wrong that it's hardware agnostic, but just the proposal and the fact that the proposal for Monero was poo-pooed previously, I assume that this is still going to go down the line of being implemented at some point, unless we can shut down the funding for Qubic. A primary factor for being able to shut down the funding for Qubic is going to be stop mining Monero through Qubic. That's the only way to stop this, I think, at this point. And that would be a removal of greed from people. And I don't think you can remove that greed in particular. So is this type of attack in particular, thwarted by security from ASICs? I'm going to still say no. I have no evidence of that. In fact, I have supporting evidence to the contrary. And I think that if we talk about kaspa in particular, kaspa is even at a bigger risk for this particular attack right now. Luckily, they chose Doge, but kaspa has lost over 50% of its hash rate, its peak all-time hash rate, meaning that there is over 50% of the hash rate turned off right now for kaspa. If there was an option for you to turn on your kaspa miners and earn 3x the amount you could be earning on kaspa and actually be profitable with your miners, of course you're going to turn on. Of course you're going to turn on. And that'll be new hash rate. And that would wreck kaspa. And the crazy part is if you look at this objectively and you just look at the numbers and the amount of available hardware that's not currently turned on, and you look at the incentive structures being set up by Qubic, kaspa is at the highest risk right now out of any of the cryptocurrencies. At least Doge is going to be an interesting one, because Doge, due to its merge mining, which means basically that the script ASIC miners are, able to switch and change what they're mining and mine multiple things at one time. Because of that, Doge will be a much more difficult target to to attack in this particular manner. Now, the Monero attack wasn't even necessarily successful either. So to say Monero was brought to its knees, that's disingenuous too, because that didn't happen. In fact, that to the contrary, in this particular case, there was selfish mining going on, but it's not like network completely halted. So I feel like it's dangerous to write with a conclusion in mind, because then you end up in this kind of pickle. So that would be my argument. Okay. Anyways, so that's what's going on right now. Unfortunately, it does look like Qubic team is not going to be changing their direction. The argument when I asked, and I'll just show you guys, because I'm trying to figure out why, right? So I did say, can I ask what is the advantage other than price manipulation of Qubic token via the buyback burn? I mean, kudos on the massive PR campaign, but I'm curious. To which Come From Beyond replied and said, a lot of electricity is burned for useless proof of work. We need that electricity for AI. These words may be hard to get, and I cannot reveal more now. In the future, they will eventually click. The problem is, and what I said here in response was like, that makes no sense. You don't have to attempt 51% attacks to have useful proof of work. I did say marketing jargon. I did take a poke. I get a little frustrated on Twitter. Anybody that follows me knows that I do. It is what I do. It is what it is. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.